I got into this hobby back in the 1950s and originally got my novice and conditional class back in 61, 62. Then I went to college and forgot about radio for a long time. And then got my technician in general in 2009, my extra in 2010. My very first contact on the radio that was logged was in January of 2010. So I really haven't been doing this all that long, 6 years. I'm in year 7 right now, or 8, I guess it is. But the most important thing for a station that's going to be running DX, what is it? Most important single thing, antenna. Okay, no matter what else you do, you got to have a good antenna. You can run QRP. If you got a good antenna, you can work the world. If you got a bad antenna and you've got a kilowatt, you're going to talk to your next door neighbor. So no matter what you do, if you're going to get out and play the DX route, find a good antenna and get it into wherever you can find to put it. I've got 2 dipoles looking in different directions, and I put up a hex beam 2 years ago. And I've got that working 20 through 10. But it's not very high, and I haven't had a lot of luck with long distance. I did work Amsterdam on 20 meters on that antenna, so I'll give it an attaboy for that. But wire antennas are good. Get them up high. If you've got multi-band antennas, they're even better because you can work everything from 160 through 6 meters if you want to. Both of mine are Cobra antennas, which means I can run basically with a good tuner anywhere from 6 to 180 or 160. The second thing is your transceiver. I started off with an ICOM 718. Love that little radio. I used it for the first year before I moved up to bigger and better radios. But I had, with a buddy pole, you guys talked about buddy pole bill. That's Felton's favorite term for me.
You're now in Fed Bill, aren't you?
I'm in Fed Bill. I've got 2 photos here of the buddy pole antennas I had in my house the first year that I was operating. And I worked 52 countries off of these antennas. Okay, so it can be done inside your house. It doesn't have to be out. But I got one of them, and I worked on 17 meters, and I figured that wasn't enough, so I bought another one, went to 20. The 2 in the living room are 17 and 20. The vertical is 15. And then I put another 17 in the bedroom. So I had 17 in the bedroom looking at Japan, 17 and 20 in the living room looking at Europe, and a 15 meter looking wherever I pointed the ground radio. But I did work TL0A in Central Africa on that vertical, looking out the window of my house heading toward Africa, so I know it works. Power output of your transmitter, I've got 264 countries confirmed, and 250 of them were probably on 100 watts or less. And I've got a K3 with a 500 watt amplifier that right now I'm using for the really rare ones if I can find them. But by and large, I use an ICOM now. I've got an ICOM 7300, which I love. That is a great radio. You're talking about CW. I've got a German decoding software package that I use on that radio. And in the last month and a half, I've got 27 countries confirmed on CW. So I'm looking to get DXCC on CW here in the next year or so. I wish I had my computer, I could tell you. It's DL something. I can get it for you and pass it to you. You know, pass it to Phil and have him send it to the rest of the club. But it's a great program. It decodes and encodes, so you can use that your computer to transmit as well. I think it's got 6 memories, so you can put the memories, stuff that you need in there, your call sign, 73 thank you, whatever you want to put in there. And I've used that, and when I can find somebody I don't have already logged, I'll call them and see if they'll come back. And it's been pretty good. I've had really good success with it. A place to operate in your house and in your wherever you live. I don't live in a gated community. I don't live in a homeowner association community by choice, because I lived in one of those when I lived in Virginia. And when I came down here, I've got an acre of land with a lot of trees. And I don't have any constraints. My neighbors are not upset at all with me putting up. I got a 45-foot tower next to the house. Thursday, I'm going to get another 10-foot section put on it. And then sometime this summer, I'm going to put up a Mosley Classic 33 with the Warwick dipole. So I'll have 20 through 10, 2017, 15, 12, and 10. Hopefully. I've been wanting to put up an antenna for the last 4 years. The other thing that I found about operating is to have some access to some fairly good software. I use Amateur Contact Log for all of my personal logging, and I've got 3,500 contacts logged, 2,100 confirmed, so I figure that's a pretty good percentage. I use that log then to upload Logbook of the World. Has anybody in here got a Logbook of the World running on their computers? Good. You know how good that is. I've got every contact that I've made logged, and I've only made 3,400 in 7 years, so I don't get on the air that often, but I get selective when I get on the air. And by selective, I mean I look at some of the posting programs where they've got everybody who talks to somebody logs that contact on one of the logging or posting systems. Solarham.com is one of them. Some of my websites that I operate on. And some of the other things like who do I talk to, what do I have in the way of equipment. I'm get a couple of those. There you go. But those are the logging programs that the N3FJP is the logging software builder, and you probably use one of their software packages for field day. It's a great logging program, takes about 30 seconds to log a contact, and it's got an interface directly to LOTW and to Club Log. So if you're interested in OQRS, Online QSL Request System, you can use Club Log to get the QSL contact confirmed. That works very well for the big contests or the big de-expeditions. The next big de-expedition coming up is to Bouvet Island down in the South Atlantic. Half the guys on that team are out of the Southeastern DX Club. Well, not half, but there's 4 or 5 of them. And it's going to be $1 million plus de-expedition. They're going to take about 22 guys and everything they need to operate autonomously on that rock for 3 weeks. And everything is going to come off the ship by helicopter onto the island. Same thing they did down in Navassa. And Bob Alphin, K4UEE, is one of the head leaders of that de-expedition. He's a Southeastern DX Club member. If you can work them, good luck. I didn't have a chance to work Navassa. I was out of town and didn't have a radio. But this one I'm going to go after, and that's why I want to get that Mosley antenna. The radio you use for operating, whatever makes you happy. I happen to be an Elecraft ICOM fan, although I've had Yaesu radios. I've never owned a Kenwood, so I don't know how they operate, but a lot of people love them. If you can operate with a amplifier, you're much better off. You can get out and get further out with a good antenna than you can with 100 watts, which is basically what I operate 95% of the time. Oh, thank you. When you get to the antennas, that being the most important part of the equation of the station, if you've got the room, try to get up a beam if you can. It'll give you that much access to the guys on the other end of the line. You're constrained by cost and real estate for an antenna. I've got a couple of dipoles that I really love. One is a homebrew that K4SJR, Frank Dean, made and let me use. It's still his, I'm just borrowing it. I've had it for 5 years. The other one is a company that makes an antenna called the Cobra Antenna. I mean, that's the name of the antenna. And they make several versions of it. There's a 40 through 10, which is about 40 feet. There's a 80 through 10, which is 73 feet. And there's a 160 through 10, which is 135 feet, I believe. So depending on the space you have, you can get any size you want. It just limits the low end of your antenna, or low end of your frequency bands that you can operate on. The Cobra, I can get to 160, the one that Frank built. So I check into the state net on 160. I don't DX on 160. I don't live anywhere quiet enough to get down in there so I can hear somebody on 160, so I just left it alone. 80 meters is a tough band for me. I've only got 43 countries confirmed. Probably never get DXCC on 80, but keep trying. The rest of the bands, all the way up through 10, I've got a DXCC certificate for. All that crap's back on the table. The other thing I like to do is play in different areas of awards, which you'll see some back there. The hardest one I ever had to work was the Worked All Zones that CQ Magazine produces. There's 40 zones in the world, and they're spread out not equally, but not even geographically making sense around the world. And trying to work all 40 of those zones was really tough, because you got to have somebody in that zone on the air when you're listening so that you can contact them. And Mongolia, which is over north of China, between China and Russia, was the hardest one I had to work. And I got a guy over in Mongolia, and he gave me a QSL card, logged it, and that was number 38, 37, I think, whatever it is. Anyway, that was the hardest one I had to work. The easiest one, which is a lot of fun, is KC4AAA. That's the call sign for the Antarctica. And depending on your need for a zone, that call sign covers 6 or 7 different zones of the world. So if you're missing a zone, you can use that contact to fill in any zone you're missing, which is kind of cool. They don't have an equivalent in the Arctic, but KC4AAA lives right smack on the South Pole, and it looks like that to the world, 360 degrees. And there's 6 or 7 zones that it actually touches. So if you need one, that's a good one to get and use. The easiest ones, obviously, are the ones in the northern hemisphere. If you're judicious and you like to play around on sideband, maybe some CW, from here you can make DXCC between North America, its adjacent islands, Caribbean, and South America and its adjacent islands. There's 100 countries plus just in the Western Hemisphere. Don't even have to get to Europe or Asia. But if you worked all in one, you can work all states along with it, which is something I never ever thought I'd ever want to do. And then ARRL came up with a W1AW Centennial Work All State Award. So I got one of those little plaques on the wall too. The other interesting DXCC award, which was something I never thought I'd ever see, was what is the name of that thing? The one with the plaque. Can't even remember the name of it. But it's 1,000 band slots. A band slot is a band in a country. Challenge award. This thing. I never ever thought I would ever make 1,000 band slots. And I did it in 4 years, almost to the day. From January 2010 to January 2014. So, I mean, it can be done. Now I'm working on 1,500, but I got a long way to go. I've got 1,135, I think. This is the Work All State Centennial Award, if you haven't got one. It's kind of cute, hanging on the wall. Here are the 40 QSL cards from the Worked All Zone. And these are the ones I tuck in to get checked by Bill Barr, who's a card checker, to get submission for the Worked All Zone award. And here's my favorite, KC4AA, or AAA, KC4 AAA. You can get zones 12, 13, 29, 30, 32, 38, and 39 on this one card. So if you're missing one of those, you can get it and submit it, which is kind of interesting. Notebooks, I just picked a couple. I've got 53 notebooks like that on a big shelf I've got in the house. Some are more full, some are less full. This one is probably the thickest one I've got. This is the month of February 2012. 1 month. So you can do it. QSLing is either expensive or inexpensive, depending on the way you do it. In the beginning, I sent out a QSL card request with a QSL money and a return envelope, self-addressed envelope, to every contact I made anywhere in the world, including multiple contacts on multiple frequencies. My return rate from that was about 95%, and still is today. If I send a ham an envelope, a QSL card, and money for him to buy a stamp, 95% chance I'll get that thing back. There are some that, one guy in Lebanon, it took me 3 years to get his card, and he was just racking up the money. He was buying all kind of stuff. Anyway, depending on what you want to do with QSLing, Logbook of the World is a great place to go. If you're doing DXing and you've got Logbook of the World, they've got about a 50% return. The world hams, 33 million, 34 million, however many there are, about half of them have access to Logbook of the World, which is good. EQSL is not good for anything other than EQSL awards, not recognized by ARRL. I don't think it's recognized by CQ Magazine, although I'm not so sure about that, but I do know ARRL does not do EQSL. So Club Log is another website that's maybe of interest to you. Club Log has, I upload all my contacts to Club Log, so I've got Logbook of the World and Club Log are in sync. But the thing I like about Club Log is their OQRS system, online QSL request system. If your guy on the other end of that call says he is going to accept OQRS, you go through Club Log, you pay the $1.50 or $2 or $3 or whatever the guy needs. Off it goes to the other end and QSL card returns. It really works and it's really nice because then you don't have to worry about printing out a card, printing out an envelope, sending it to the guy and waiting and hope he comes back with a card. OQRS is very, very good. ARRL has, as you probably know, just reneged on their deletion of Kure and Midway Islands and said, whoops, we screwed up. So they reinstated them. So we're back with 339, I believe, countries in the world that are eligible for DXEC awards. DXEC awards is something that I was shooting for from the very beginning. I wanted to be able to work 100 countries on one band or 100 countries on all bands. I didn't care. I just wanted that DXEC certificate on my wall. In 10 months, I went from 0 contacts to DXCC mixed and DXCC phone, all single sideband contacts. And I said, oh, that's cool. So now let's try band DXCCs. So I've got 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, and 40 DXCCs. I don't have 80 and probably never will get 80. I don't have the real estate in my area to put out either a long antenna or a, what's the receive antenna? No. No, it's a strictly a receive antenna, but it's about a mile long. Huh? No, it's about that high off the ground. Anyway, 160 and 80, you got to have a lot of real estate, or you got to have a lot of power, or both. And I would like to get DXCC on 80, but probably not. The next thing I'm looking for is to expand the Challenge Award to 1,500. I've got 377 to go to get to that point, which is going to take some time. Hopefully with the new antenna, maybe more power. I know those guys going to Dayton will find a brand new Elecraft amplifier at their desk. They now have a 1500 watt amplifier to go along with their 500 watt amplifier. So if you want to get a big time signal, that would be a good place to start. Equipment is up to you, whatever makes you happy, whatever you're comfortable operating with. I never could operate with Yaesu, and I had a 950 and a 450, and I never felt good with those two radios because I never could figure out all the menu items and all the settings on them. So I gave them away. Literally, I gave both radios away. I got the Elecraft because I had a friend of mine who was using one, and he was using it on CW. He didn't have any of the mods on the K3, or it was a K2. He had a K2 to do anything other than CW. And he wanted to get a bigger radio because he was only running 10 watts. So I said, okay, I'll buy it for him. So I bought it for him. And then I looked at the K2 upgrade packages on the Elecraft website and found out, yeah, you can buy all that stuff, but it comes as a kit. So you got to put the boards together and all that kind of stuff. Then I found a guy over in North Carolina that put boards together and could upgrade your radio for you for a price. So I shipped this CW 10 watt radio over to him and I said, I want a 100 watt amplifier. I want the filters for single sideband. Leave the CW stuff there and we'll go from there. So about 4 months later, I get practically a brand new radio back with all the single sideband stuff. That was my first Elecraft. Then I got the K3 just for sideband. And then I loved that, and they came out with the K3S, and backward compatible to the K3, all of the K3S processing boards. Radio goes to Elecraft, puts in all the boards on the K3 to make it a K3S. So now I've got a K3S effectively, I got a KPA 500. I don't have a pan adapter for the K3, but I do have a pan adapter for a KX3, which is another nice little radio. I also have a 100 watt amplifier for the KX3, which makes it nice. But use what's comfortable and what you can afford. I'm retired. Don't have anybody but 2 cats. I can go do anything I want. So watch your pocketbook because you can spend a lot of money on this stuff. Yeah. The biggest problem I've had is getting a big amplifier. I've got the power. I had a guy come up from south of Atlanta, put me 220 into my shack. So I got a dedicated 220 volt line going back to the power box just for that KPA 500 amplifier. So I'm all set with that. The antenna situation is my laziness and really lack of people to help. Thursday, maybe. There's 2 tree climbers who are also antenna guys, supposedly coming out to the house to put that last 10-foot section on that pole, on the tower. It's already got the rotator installed, everything. I just got to lift it 100 and some odd pounds up into the air, 45 feet, put it on the 3-prong tower post, bolt it down, run the cable down, and get ready to put the antenna on top. So that'll be my summer activity, hopefully, to get that whole process completed. I've got the antenna. It's in a box in my garage. All I got to do is take it out, put it together, and put it up on the tower. But those websites on that piece of paper, those are the ones I regularly go to practically every day. If I had my laptop, you would see they're all on there. I do everything I can with ARRL. I do QSL logging for them on Logbook of the World. I do hard copy QSLs on their DXCC page. I take those into the card checker we have at the Southeastern DX Club when I get enough to get checked. I've got 4 right now that need to be checked, all CW. And get that done, and that makes LFTW real happy because all that stuff gets meshed into DXCC for awards. As far as other things, the posting programs out there, I use SolarHam, which connects to a Finnish logging system. That's the one I use all the time because it gives me the DX station, who he's talking to, what frequency he's on, what mode he's on, and what country he's from. All that's right there in front of you, and it's updated about every 10 seconds. So you get a continuous update of all the DX stations that are being reported on that one website. Let me borrow one of those pieces of paper a second, if I could. DX Watch is another good one. It's got a little different view because you get a map of the world, so you could actually see where the guy is operating, and it also shows you the sun and the sun line, so you can tell what part of the world the guy's in. Buddy Pole, you all know me as Buddy Pole Bill. I've got all the buddy poles that were in the house, of which I had 4 at one time, are now packed away. And I now go to a non-coil version of a buddy pole. I make full-length 20-meter dipole, 43 feet long. I feed it with ladder line, a 4-to-1 balun, and I operate it on every band from 6 meters to 20 meters. So if I'm out at field day, I did this 2 years in a row at field day. That was the go-to-station antenna. And whatever bands the other guys weren't using either for CW or sideband, they were available for the go-to-station on the same antenna. Took about 10 minutes to put up and get it operational, and the go-to-stations had access to all those bands 24/7. It's a great antenna. I still love to play with it. Went down to St. Lucia 2 years ago, and one of the guys had in-fed antennas, and I'd never used one before. And we set up in-fed antennas on every band from 40 through 10 at the villa we were staying in on St. Lucia. And turned out to be easy to put up, tremendous operating antenna, and they're very small. Roll them up, put them in your pocket, take them with you, and put them in your bag. I had 4 plus filters when I went down. That was my contribution to the group. So I had the filters for 17, 15, 20, and 10. Somebody else had 12 meters, and then we had 2 antennas on each band, so we could put them in different locations. But that's a great antenna to have. And a company called My Antenna builds some really good multi-band antennas. I've got a 10 through 20 meter My Antenna dipole. No, I'm sorry, it was an in-fed. It's an in-fed 80 through 10. You can put that thing up. It's 135 feet, I believe. And slope it any direction you want, or just put it out as a flat dipole. And it works as good as any dipole I've ever seen. And it's half the size. And we had, one guy had a 40 through 10 My Antenna, which worked phenomenal on all those bands, 10 through 40. And it was a good antenna to operate, and it just simplified the antenna selection because you had one antenna doing all the bands 40 through 10, instead of having single antennas, which is what we were originally playing with. Cobra Antenna was something I heard of, and then I found out that they really do work. And I've got an 80 through 10 Cobra at the house that is phenomenal. I've got it pointed toward Europe and the South Pacific. And I can routinely cover everything in Europe, all the way from Scandinavia down to Italy, North Africa, and on into Russia, and then forget about this. I got to get a different antenna to go east-west to get into South Asia. South Pacific, another problem. South Pacific from here is due west, believe it or not. So if you want to talk to somebody in South Pacific, you got an antenna heading west. Not what you would think, but that's where it locates. And I don't have an east-west antenna right now. That's another project I'm going to pursue with or without the beam. And attempt to try to get some more stuff done in that area. There's a lot of islands down there I've not worked, and just adds to the quantity, adds to the total. I've got 76, I believe, more to go to get top of the list, top of the honor roll, and there's no way on earth I can get there. There won't be DXpeditions going to some of these countries until after I'm long dead. And Scarborough Reef is one. Oh, yeah. Navassa is another. They probably won't go back to Navassa for another 20 years. Desecheo is another one. I don't know when they're going to get down there. The South Georgia, South Orkney, whatever it was, down in the South Pacific last year, I never could hear those guys. They were on 2 different island groups down there, and I didn't hear them last year, which means that it'll be another 10 years before anybody goes to those 2 islands. Really tough to get to. The Bouvet DXpedition coming up in January has taken years of planning to get that DXpedition off the ground. Estimated cost well over $1 million. You can go to their website if you want to contribute. I do it because of Southeastern DX Club participation. I'll give, whatever, $100 or whatever, just to make sure that they can get this thing off and running. But DX is a fun thing if you haven't tried it. If you've got a technician class license, guess what? 28,300 to 28,500 is the hottest part of the 10-meter band when it's open. And a technician is allowed to operate in that band, 28.3 to 28.5. It is a great band when 10 is not always open. But when it is, that's a good part of the band to be on. If you run CW or run a software program that runs CW, you can run down into 40 meters, and I don't know about 80 anymore. Can you run 80 meters on technician? 40 meters is a good place to run CW. There's a lot of activity down on 7,000 to 70-30, 70-40, just below the 70-70 where you get into PSK and stuff. Digital modes, hot. Everybody runs PSK sometime in their life. There is a PSK DXCC award, both band-oriented or just a generic digital award. So you can run PSK, RTTY, all those different modes and have some fun doing that. A lot of the countries are running now into the digital area because the propagation is so poor. You don't have enough power to get sideband through to some of these places. So they're going digital. They're going CW, they're going PSK or RTTY, or JT65 or JT12, I think is the other one. But it depends on what you're looking for. My goal when I got back into this hobby, because I spent my Air Force career and my life after I retired from the Air Force basically overseas in one fashion or another. Not permanently, but just temporary duty, anywhere from a week to 3-4 months at a crack. So there are a lot of places I've been in the world I wanted to talk to, and a couple of those places I've been, I have not been able to talk to. So they're on my to-do list. So I want to get a chance to get as many as I can because it's fun. And most of all, it's a challenge. Because when you see a CW or a sideband station operating from a want-to-get location, and the first thing they say, we're operating split. Does everybody know how to operate split? Okay. Operating split's a challenge because you don't know where he's operating. If he says, I'm up, what does that mean? He's got his transmit frequency and he's looking for other people up from his transmit frequency. Because at 5 kilohertz, 10 kilohertz, somewhere in between, 20 kilohertz, some guys run 20. How about a split band DX? I've run into that a couple of times. Operate on one band for transmit and receive on another band. That's fun. If you don't run split, you're not going to have a lot of fun doing DXpeditions because they all operate split. Every one. Very seldom do you ever get a DXpedition that's running Simplex unless it's the last day and they're just wanting whoever's left. I've not run into that, but a couple of times I ran into a DXpedition over in the Pacific that was running Simplex on the last day because they weren't having any luck calling and having people come up split, so they said, okay, we'll just run Simplex. And they had a lot of takers because a lot of people don't know how to run split. So if you can run Simplex, you can get them. If you can run split, it's easy. That 7300 is a godsend because it's got a pan adapter built into it. So when you see the big glob go up 10 kilohertz above where you're talking, that's where the DXpedition is listening. And then there's a single blob, that's where he's talking. So up a little bit, there's a blob, that's where everybody's calling the guy. And he's looking for a signal he can hear. Having been on the end of a DXpedition, I know exactly what they're doing. They're looking for at least part of a call sign they can hear so they can contact that person and complete the contact. And sometimes you can't hear but one letter, or maybe two if you're lucky. In St. Lucia, at dusk, when the gray line comes through, so does Japan. They just flock into the Caribbean. And for about 20 minutes, on any band you're operating on, all JAs. You don't hear anything else. And trying to work a blast of JAs for 20 minutes is really interesting because all you're getting is maybe one or two letters. But the good thing about the Japanese, as soon as you say that pair of letters or the A at the end or the whatever, everybody quiets down. And the person that had that call calls back, contact completed, you call QRZ, and here they come again. And you try it again. And that's the way the DX happened. There's this wall of noise for just long enough for you to decipher a letter or two out of a call sign, and then it's quiet. The Spanish, just the reverse. It doesn't make any difference what you have. They're going to yell at you forever until they either get a hold of you or you just give up and quit. The Germans are good, Brits are good, Swedes are good, Finns are good. Spanish, Italian, horrible. Worst operators on the planet. You can't shut them up. You can't make them listen. You just give up. You just say, I've had enough, I quit. But it's a fun hobby. I love the heck out of it. And I'm glad after 50 years being out of it, I could get back into it. I didn't think I could pass the test when I first tried. I hadn't been studying for 40 years. And I looked at the questions and I looked at the book and I said, find me a site online that's got all this stuff and let me get through this, get the license and go play. And from there, it just has been fun. I've enjoyed it. I've spent a lot of money, but it's all been worth it. The radios I gave away were to hams who didn't have radios, couldn't afford them. They now have a good Yaesu they can play with that they never otherwise would have had, so that made me feel good. I haven't given any away as gifts for club activity yet, but I've got a couple of Bofangs I may do that with. So, any questions about DX? I know it's getting late and you guys want to go home. Yes, sir.
The DX spotting network.
Yes.
I've seen it and et cetera, but I still can't get my head around it.
Spotting networks, okay. If I am a station that wants to spot a DX station, there's a place on the website where I can do that. And what I do is I put in the call sign, the frequency, and what mode he's in, and maybe another little comment. Hit that, and it goes and it shows up on the spotting thing. What I use it for is to find places that I haven't got on my log. I look for call signs, countries, and bands that I don't have. Because everything I do, or 99% of what I do, is sideband. So I'm looking in the...
O'Brien's web?
Huh?
You talking about O'Brien's web?
Don't know O'Brien. The one I use is on SolarHam, DX Watch. Those are two of the things on this list. DX Watch, SolarHam, and DX Heat. Those three are the spotting sites that I use. And they give you every contact that's logged anywhere in the world because they share databases back and forth. So if you log a contact through one of those 3 websites, not log for your personal use, but log to tell the world that you've talked to SU something or other somewhere in the world. Hey, let me call you back. I'm writing about a comms test. Bye. But they put that on there, and if you go look at those websites, what you've got is instant access to the DX world right there in front of you. Now all you got to do is get your antenna, your power, and your transmitter, and your head squared away to talk to the guy that's on that DX, on that log. But it's really quick. I mean, I have looked at the thing and found a place that I hadn't talked to before, and I tune up on that frequency, and I try to contact them, and sometimes I'm lucky and sometimes I'm not. And it's a great place to find out what's out there. It's getting a little slow right now because the sunspots are going to 0. Solar flux is down. Propagation is beginning to get horrible. This summer we're going to get virtually no DX activity at all, I don't think. Hopefully in the fall and the winter it'll come back a little bit. And by January I hope we get into the good part of the season so we can talk to Bouvet. Because it is straight south of here, practically. So I think it's 170 or 160 degrees. So you point your antenna south and hope to get it Bouvet. That's number 2 or number 3 on the all-time most wanted list right now for DX locations. And there are more. Johnston Island's one. Bob Alphen has in his head that he wants to work every U.S. possession. And he's got Navassa. He's looking, I think, at Desecheo, which is another one. I think he's looking at Johnson Island. And any other one that hadn't been worked for a while. Curry Island's one that's coming up. Midway, there's maybe or maybe not some people going to Midway because it's run by the Fish and Wildlife Service. And those people are just, touch my fish, I'll kill you kind of guys. But you look at there's a couple of sites, excuse me for getting out of your camera range for a second.
It'll be all right.
There's a couple of more places that are of interest for finding other upcoming activity. And these are the announced DX petitions. These are the ones coming up. So you can look at that thing and find out who's going to be where, when. No, it's all one printout. And the other one is DX World, which is also another spot that you can go find out what's coming up. The web is full of good information if you know what you're looking for. And trying to figure out where you're going to look. In my case, I got 99% of that information from the Southeastern DX Club. Those guys gave me hints and told me where to go to find information. And they got some good DXers in that club. If my computer was up, if you look at their club blog status of all the members of the Southeastern DX Club, I'm number 30. And most of them above me are at the top, somewhere between 330 and 340, or 339 or whatever the number is. And here I am down here, I've got 264 countries confirmed and I'm number 30. So it gives you a clue how good these guys are. But it's fun. I haven't been at it all that long, but I haven't got anything else to do, so I might as well have fun playing radio. And all I got to do is take care of my 2 cats, make sure that the antenna, I had an antenna fall down. We had that windstorm. One of my Cobras, the phenolic end of it that held the antenna line on one end and the guy line, or the line to hold it on the tree on the other, there were 2 holes in there about that far from the end. And when we had the trees go like this, it broke the phenolic and the antenna fell to the ground. So I'm without one of my dipoles right now. I'll get it from HRO tomorrow and put it up, get it back in operation. But that was one of my 10 through 80s that looks to Europe. That's my 45 225 antenna. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to ask you a Ballon question.
Ballon question.
You mentioned that you have a 4-to-1 Ballon on your dipole.
On the twin lead.
Also, the Cobra guy recommends a 4-to-1 Ballon. Thank you. On the Cobra. However, DX Engineering very strongly recommends a 1-to-1 Ballon for all dipoles,
Depends on what you're feeding it with.
and that are fed with
Coax.
ladder line.
Coax. 1-to-1 on coax, 4-to-1 on twin lead. The impedance of the antenna,
Well, DX Engineering's dipole is fed with 450 ohm ladder line.
what antenna does DX Engineering have?
The all-band dipole.
I haven't seen it. Don't know. The ones that I've got,
And so anyway, I bought a Ballon Designs 1-to-1 high dollar Ballon
I got 4 of them.
and hooked it up to my Cobra. And the KX3 tunes it perfectly on all bands.
Super. I mean, if that's what they
And
built
I
in,
cut the 450 to fit. I didn't measure it, I just cut it to fit.
everybody has their own way of building antenna. The 2 antenna builders that I use, the Cobra antenna that HRO sells, it is a 4-to-1 Ballon because the impedance at the antenna is like 12 ohms. And you built 4-to-1 on it to get it up to 50.
Is this the Cobra Ultralight?
Yes. Yep. I got the junior, which is the 80 through 10. The senior's 160 through 10.
I have the senior.
That's 160 through 10.
It's like 145.
Long antenna. I don't have trees in my place long enough to stretch out and get that far. The 80 meter fits perfectly. The 160 I've got is one Frank built. It's 145 feet, I think, long. I get the top end of 160 for, 18.
He built 100. It'd be like 260 feet long or something.
No, this one isn't. The only thing I can get is the very top end of 160. And even then, it's like 6-to-1. A good tuner can tune it down. Huh?
Couple hundred.
No, it's 100 and, I think 140, 160 feet, yeah. It's enough to get between the 2 furthest trees on my property and just barely make it because the end of the antenna is coming up there.
Ladder line fed?
Yes. I got a 100-foot ladder line on it.
Yeah. That's why you can get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, I got all the room in the world for this stuff. That's the nice thing about having an acre of land. I had to cut down some trees because they were either rotting or pointing toward my house, neither one of which I wanted. So I had those cut down, which gave me some space in the backyard to put up antennas, opened up some area. I would like to put up a 160. I've got a 160 in-fed that I got from my antennas, but it's 230 feet long. And I don't have 230 feet. I do have it, but it's going to be laying on top of trees all the way back into the back of the property.
Yeah.
And it's going to have to be up awful high, which means I got to have some guys who can point it up that high and do it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you mentioned you have like radio zones go out all over the world, or
I'm sorry?
you have radio zones like all over the world, or,
Yeah.
I mean, like, do people in most parts of the world always gonna have access to ham radios, or?
There are some countries that are strict about whether or not you can become a ham because they're afraid of what you might tell somebody, like North Korea, for example. They have 0 hams. The only hams they ever have in North Korea is somebody who's given permission to go there and operate, and then they leave. But everything they bring in, they have to leave there in the country. So if you bring a radio into North Korea as a ham operator and have permission to operate with P5 call sign, when you leave, you take what you can carry, not any equipment, just your luggage and your clothing, and you leave the country. Everything else stays.
And like, well, some of these third world countries, do people there have access to ham radios?
It depends on the country. South Africa, I worked a guy, not South Africa, Central African Republic. TL0A was the guy's call sign. At the time I had a conversation with him, which was in 2010, he was the only ham operating in the Central African Republic. He was a missionary, and he had a ham license. He was from France, and he was there semi-permanently. But when he left, if he left, there would be no more hams. The ST0A or R, ST0R, I think, which was the Southern Sudan, when they opened that up about 4 years ago. That group went in, they operated for about 2 weeks. They left the country, and they left, no hams left in the country. And then South Sudan got semi-independence from North Sudan, and OH2BH, Marty Lane from Finland went in, talked to the Minister of Communications. They brought in some hams and did training classes just like you do here, your ham cram. And they got some of their operators licensed, and there were a period of time when you had ST0 operators who were local native operators to that country. I haven't heard any on the air for about a year, so I don't know what their status is. But the ham equipment that they had was donated by people like Marty Lane. They just brought equipment in and left it. That happens a lot when you go on a de-expedition in some of these places, particularly down in South Pacific or into Africa or South America. The de-expedition will come in usually with a doctor of some sort. And they will spend a lot of time while they're at that location caring for the local folks who have medical problems. And then they will attempt to have somebody in that area who can operate the radio for emergencies primarily. In the middle of the Pacific, you get a typhoon come through there and your island may disappear. So they give the radios to the people, show them how to use them, and then they have to bring in gas for the generators because they don't have any gas down there. So they have to make regular arrangements to bring in fuel to fuel the generator, which they gave to the people. And that happens quite often, more than you know about. It really does. Are there hams in all these places? No. Will there ever be? No. Scarborough Reef is in the middle of the Pacific, and the only way you can get to that place is to fight the Chinese off, because it's right there in the Spratly Island chain. And it's just a little bitty rock that happens to be out of the water, and that's Scarborough Reef. That's another one that I probably will never have an opportunity to operate. And it's on the list. Will I operate? Nah, probably not. So I'll never make the top, so I'm not concerned about it. I'm just trying to have more fun than I've ever had, which I do every day. Get up in the morning, go and turn the radio on, see what's on. Feed the cats, make them happy, and then play radio. Life is good. It doesn't get any better than this.